Today we're talking about Red Mountain Valley Camp Stove. I'm going to do the first burn, do a little overview review. I've actually owned this stove before and they've done a few changes to the model, so I'm going to go over those as well. The first change we're going to talk about is the leg brackets. These were previously welded on, now they are bolt-on. Make sure to put those screws in finger tight first, not to cross thread the threads or damage the threads. After that, the legs, nothing complicated. They slide in. They tighten down with a wing nut. You can do some adjusting. There's not very much adjusting to do. The door itself, the door actually is removable now. Might help for cleaning the stove. The stove outlet used to be welded on. It's now screw on. It's also a bit longer. You might notice there is no damper. Bit of a con. But having it screw on actually helps transport it and store it. One thing I definitely consider a pro is the stove pipe. They made them slightly shorter. This is why they made this one, the outlet, a bit longer. They fit all inside the stove. Same with the legs, same with the pipe, same with all the accessories. It makes it so much easier to store and to transport. As for the spark arrestor, it's meant to stop any flames or sparks from hitting your tent. You might look at this model and say it's not adequate, but they were smart enough to integrate a little spark arrestor inside the neck of the actual assembly itself. It does come supplied with a ash scraper and a poker. The poker itself is just a flat bar. I've honestly never used it. I use this to not only scrape the ashes, I also use it to open the door because that little handle there gets really hot. Works pretty good for that. These little tubes right here are actually meant to draw out some kindling. These are much smaller than the previous version. As for the top here, there are two carry handles. Makes carrying it slightly easier. The top here is two racks. You could fold these out, hang some gloves, hang some clothes out to dry, something small. It won't touch the stove. There is a small gap between. You can actually fold the top back down, use it as a cooking surface. It actually lies flat on this model. The previous one I had, it wasn't perfectly flat, couldn't use it to cook. This one looks like you can. I'm going to try it out soon. Finally, time for the burn-in process. I don't overcomplicate this. I do one small burn with some kindling for about 20-30 minutes, get the inside dry, get the stove warmed up, and then I do a second burn for about 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour, as long as I need until the fumes stop coming off the stove. Let it go for another 30 minutes or so, and you're good to go. Once the fire does get going, I like to set this to about the midway point, and I sort of use this as my baseline and gauge whether I need to open it more, close it more, and go from there. You might notice those toxic fumes coming off. That's exactly why, one, I changed sides. I was sitting over there before. This is all the paint residue, the oil, the grease, whatever they use on the assembly to avoid it from rusting. They paint it. All these things are toxic fumes. You do not want to burn inside of a tent, inside of an enclosed space. So you definitely want to do the burn-in process outside first. This is still the first burn. I'm still going to do a second one right after, and I'm going to do it until those fumes stop. First burn is done. Before the flame goes out, I am going to refill it with some bigger pieces. Get the fire going, open up the damper completely, get it really hot, get all the fumes out of there. I did mention that I owned one of these stoves before. I did not get rid of it because it wasn't good. It is a cheap stove, I'll be honest about that. I got rid of it because I actually repurposed it about 3 years ago into a maple syrup evaporator. A really rough version, but I needed to evaporate some maple sap into maple syrup, and this is all I had at the time. So I cut it open, made a maple syrup evaporator. I unfortunately don't have it anymore, but I really like the stove, so I did go out and buy a second one. And there you go, haven't had any fumes in about 30 minutes or so. It's almost ready for my first camping trip. I do have to adjust that door because there is a little, I can't touch right now, it's way too hot, but There's a little gap there, so we'll have to adjust that door a little bit, but otherwise the burn-in process is done. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.